Krupa, and I'm speaking today on the behalf of the Fictional University's Fictional User Experience team. When we talk about student well-being, we often feel quite confident that we already know the story. We assume that stressed out students are not sleeping enough. We assume that students feeling disconnected aren't in class, so they have poor attendance. We also assume that the dissatisfied students are the ones that are struggling academically, and that's why they are dissatisfied. One simple question: what if some of these assumptions that we are making, what if they were wrong? So, 4 research questions. 1 looks at the relationship between stress levels and sleep hours. 2 looks at how social connectedness varies by mode or student status or different subgroups. 3 looks at the overall student satisfaction and GPA. 4 looks at which student subgroups show lower well-being, and this is calculated using stress and social connectedness. Let's start with stress and sleep, probably the most intuitive pairing in student well-being. What we see is that students reporting high stress levels are spread out across almost the entire range of sleep hours, including 5, 6, and even 7 hours of sleep. But look at the distributions. What stands out immediately is how much these boxes overlap. Even when the medians are slightly different, you see that the ranges itself are very similar. And the same for mode of study. In other words, if we tried to guess a student's stress level just based on the faculty or their mode of study, we could probably be wrong. Though our intuition wants them in neat little groups, the data refuses to cooperate. Now, this is important because tells us that stress isn't defined by one special structural factor, especially by mode of student or sleep hours. Next, a look at social connectedness. The good thing here is that a large or half of the cohort say that they have moderate levels of connectedness. Great. But there are, in fact, at least 1/5 of the students that fall into the extremely low and the low categories. When we break it down across faculty and across mode of study, right away there's no clear pattern that emerges. Comparing against attendance, again, there was no expected pattern, at least our first initial pattern that emerges, because students that feel low connectedness often have great levels of attendance. Now, this might be because attendance is compulsory, but again, our initial intuition struggles a lot. At this point, my natural question was, are we missing something? Right? So I went straight over here. Let me split students into domestic and international. And what you're seeing here is the number of students within each mode of study and a student status group, who reports low social connectedness. And the darker the color, the lower the social connectedness level is. But this made no sense quickly because I realized that there is a huge demographic of domestic students versus a tinier demographic of international students. Once I started looking for social connectedness within their group rates, and that's when a true pattern started to evolve, right? Particularly the students who are international and they are studying in person felt the lowest social connectedness. Surprisingly, the online students seemed fine. Moving on to student overall satisfaction distribution. Looks promising, doesn't it? A lot of people have rated 5. But as soon as you bring down the satisfaction level to 3, almost half of the cohort say that they're dissatisfied. And what's even more surprising is that you see a whole lot of these people who are dissatisfied have very high GPAs. Let's investigate. Who are these people with very high GPAs but also very low satisfaction scores? Looking at the different subgroups of students by faculty or mode of study or gender, there aren't any discernible differences. So to look a little deeper into this, I fixed a heat map between the mode of study and the people with higher GPAs. Right away, you see the least satisfaction is concentrated here with the In-person students at 72.97%. When we break this down, patterns begin to appear. The students with the maximum at risk are domestic, in-person students, it seems. And across faculty, you notice again it's clustered. Health and engineering are the departments that are worse off, and there's a sharp increase when there's students have a high workload, suggesting like there's a cumulative pressure, right? It's not just a single cause. At the end of the day, what have been our findings? First of all, there's no strong linear relationship between stress and sleep. Second, there is a concentration of international students studying in person who feel perhaps a bit lonely. 3, a lot of high performing students report low satisfaction levels. And 4, students with the lower well-being risks concentrate in the group of in-person and domestic students. So what are we going to do about it? 1, talk directly to the student subgroups who we've identified as risk. 2, design specific support for specific subgroup. 3, improve the survey. We don't have enough data to come up with conclusive results.